which had 30 outputs, 27 speakers and 3 subwoofers. So the way we start by declaring the loudspeaker layout is in this user interface. We implemented this user interface because obviously with up to 34 speaker position in Dolby Atmos, up to 30 possible speaker location in DTSX, and up to 13 loudspeaker position in Aura 3D, all of them not necessarily having the same channel name, it would be literally impossible to set up such a system from a text menu on the front panel of such a processor. So we had to implement some interface like this to make things easier, because by definition it's quite complex. So in that system we have 10 Atmos ceiling speakers and a number of loudspeakers at ear level, plus 3 subwoofers. I'm going to spare you the details how we declare those speakers, but it doesn't really matter whether we declare a speaker for Atmos or DTSX or Aura, because ultimately we don't believe anyone should install format-specific loudspeakers. We know that by definition, the recommendation for speaker placement across Dolby Atmos and Aura 3D, to take those examples, are dramatically different. So we have seen in the past, and we still see some manufacturers recommending to install specific Atmos speakers and specific Aura speakers. In our opinion, it's a nonsense, and it's really taking the customer for a walking wallet, because ultimately the money is going to spend in the Aura 3D speakers. If there is a majority of Dolby Atmos available, are not going to be used. So they cost a lot of money, and yet they're most of the time silent. As an alternative, we in fact released our own loudspeaker placement recommendation in 2014, which is now being used as a foundation for the new CEDIA immersive white paper. So best practice for immersive sound speaker placement. And the idea is to declare a speaker regardless of the format based on where it is in the room, and map the channel across different formats to be played back by this particular speaker. So that's exactly what happened here. I'm going to take the example of the ceiling speaker, of course. So it was initially declared as a Dolby Atmos, which is why when I select it, it tells me left front height, which is one of the channels available in Dolby Atmos soundtrack. But what this system allows us to do is basically saying the system, whenever I have an Atmos soundtrack, this loudspeaker is going to play left front height. But if it's Aura 3D, this loudspeaker will play height left channel through that speaker. And across DTSX, it's going to be left up front, and so on. Sorry?
No, I was noticing that you use the mono amplification for each channel.
Some mono.
Yeah, because these were...
Just few. Just few. Mono amp.
Oh, no, it's mono amplifications because we drive in full range.
Ah, okay, not because you have the...
No,
oh,
because
okay.
let me show you very quickly. We have a few customers buying this processor as the 8-channel configuration because it's available in 8, 16, 24 or 32 channels. If you buy it as 8 to start with, you can later upgrade it to 16, 24, which makes it very interesting because you may start with 7.1 and then move to a new house. If you move to a new house and start installing speakers on the ceiling, you don't want to buy a new platform. The cost between buying a new processor and just an upgrade for this one is very, very different. So the initial investment might be a little bit higher, but over the long run, it's much more.
So the
relevant.
chassis is the same for...
Chassis is the same. You just remove the top cover, install expansion boards, software updates, and you're ready to go. It's an hour process.
You cannot upgrade it with decoder from the channel machine.
We do now because we've had a few customers doing 5.1.2.
Okay.
And
Because in the past I remember that.
In the past, we didn't want to do it because we thought it's nonsense for that kind of product, but you listen to what the customer wants.
Okay.
Another possible application for an 8-channel unit would be, here it's full range speaker, but we can declare any loudspeaker as biamp, triamp, or quad amp. So we have the Nautilus here, for instance. they're driven actively with the BMW active crossovers. But in cinema and also in hi-fi, in fact in Munich we were demonstrating the Altitude 32 with 4-way active loudspeakers using this very technology. So here's the very simplistic approach whereby you only set the crossover frequency. But then in the advanced setting interface, I'm not going to show it to you today, you can set up the different crossovers very precisely. High pass, low pass, frequency, they can be asymmetrical. You can set different slope, different filter types for every single of those filters. So it's very, very flexible. And then you can calibrate the crossover itself to time align the different drivers, level align them, find out whether one of them is connected with inverted polarity. The system figures out everything by itself. And then you can obviously manually adjust if you want to bring further improvements or if it's not to your taste. But that's the idea. In that case, once again, it was full range, so it was only 1 output per speaker. And then, because I did some change, I need to reload the preset. So you get the idea. Across the different formats, we map channels to speakers. What happens then is, if I play Dolby Atmos, the system will rely on this channel mapping. If I play Aura 3D, the system will rely on this channel mapping. And that's completely transparent and seamless for the customer. Brings us to something else that is quite unique, because other processors are already enabled with Dolby Atmos, Aura 3D, and possibly DTSX for the demo, but none of them can play back and switch automatically from one to the other. The reason for that is that they're not designed to work alongside each other. So when you get the SDK or the implementation of Dolby, DTS and Aura, you have limitations. You cannot get around unless you do the implementation by yourself instead of relying on DSP manufacturer, which we did. That's why we're the only one to be able to play Dolby Atmos, Aura 3D and DTSX at the back of each other without any action required by the user. And if you think about it, this limitation is quite crazy. Going back to the 7.1 days, that would basically mean whether I'm playing Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio, as a customer, I have to look on the jacket or on my audio soundtrack selection in the Blu-ray and then activate one option in the processor. That's insane. And yet that's what's currently happening with every other processor on the market. So being able to drive more than 12 discrete channels, up to 32 in that case, plus playing back all the different formats without any action required from the user, already two completely unique capabilities in terms of decoding. There is another one. The channel mapping I have here for Atmos, the one I have here for DTSX. By the way, DTSX, as we know, is unfortunately still limited to 11 discrete channels maximum, even though they allow for 30 loudspeaker position. So what we do is, first the system tells you, oops, it's red, because I've got 30 loudspeakers, but DTSX allows me to use only 11 different channels. So here I'm kind of reminded that, hey, left height is indeed one of the 30 possible speaker position with DTSX, but you're already using 11. If you go beyond 11, it's not going to work. So please go back and set left surround. It doesn't mean you're not going to use all those speakers, because even though it won't be discrete, and therefore it won't be as good as if it was discrete, you can set arrays. So for instance, if 7.1.4 is the limit here, we have one surround speaker here, which is declared at left surround 1 in Dolby Atmos, which will play left surround in DTSX. So will this loudspeaker. So the signal is duplicated across the loudspeakers to provide a more consistent listening experience across the seating area.
Only duplicated, or do you do something else on?
Unfortunately, we only duplicate it. That's if we don't use the remapping, and if we do unfortunately, that's the limit we have right now. So the third unique kind of decoding capabilities we have is when it comes to upmixing. we have different listening formats here. Those listening formats can be linked to inputs, can be selected on the fly by the user, and they have all a very different behavior depending on the format we're playing back. For instance, Dolby Surround listening mode will upmix everything that is not Dolby Atmos using the Dolby Surround mixer. Same for Neural X. Everything that is not either Dolby Surround or DTSX or Auro 3D will be upmixed to Neural X. We keep playing back the native 3D audio material as native. We don't upmix them, of course. That's a nonsense. And what I was trying to say is that unlike other processors, you can upmix DTS legacy soundtrack using the Dolby Surround mixer. And you can upmix Dolby True HD soundtrack using the Neural X upmixer, which, as far as I know, is still a limit and still not possible with other processors so far. Okay, I said I wouldn't be too long, so enough said about decoding. I hope it was clear enough and not too deep into the details.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
The decoding, is it with a hardware chip you develop, or is it software?
It's software.
It's software.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you're seeing here is the user interface, and what's underlying this user interface is a custom Linux system we have developed for over 10 years.
Okay.
It's optimized for audio, it's very efficient, it's 50 megabytes, so it's very lightweight, very stable, and that's the same operating system we use in studio.